Well, every girl crazy about a sharp-dressed man. If you don't know where that line is from, then you don't understand one of the most amazing and influential bands in automotive culture. Their hits may not have been about cars, but they're songs you want to play in your car. And they made a 1933 Ford Coupe famous. And that car brought the aftermarket industry and the classic car industry to the forefront. The song in question is Sharp Dressed Man, and the band in question is ZZ Top. ZZ Top, besides just Billy Gibbons being a downright car fanatic, ZZ Top helped influence a lot of the automotive industry. And today, AutoLooks is going to take a look at how they influenced and helped change both the classic car industry and the automotive industry on the AutoLooks podcast. Welcome back to the AutoLooks podcast. I am your host, as always, the doctor to the automotive industry, Mr. Everett J, coming to you from our host website at AutoLooks.net. If you haven't been there, stop by, check it out, read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, and go to the Corporate Links website page. Big or small, we have them all. Car companies from around the globe, all available on the AutoLooks.net website. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by podbeam.com. So like I said at the beginning, every girl crazy about a sharp-dressed man. Well, I wouldn't say that all the members of ZZ Top would be considered what, a lot of people would consider the sharp-dressed man. But between their shades, their great, amazing riffs, there's a car culture behind them. ZZ Top helped bring that car culture to light in the 1980s. For a band that stretched all the way back to 1969, their breakthrough really came in the 1980s, with not only the cover art of Eliminator, but also its follow-up, Afterburner. ZZ Top showed us an amazing car that we had all forgotten about. You have to remember, the 1980s was a time when classic car industry was just starting to take off. The classic car industry was always been around, but not as big as it was about to become. And in the 1980s, people started seeing vehicles from the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, and even their muscle cars that were only a decade old as cool, amazing vehicles that they want to showcase to the world. ZZ Top showcased their 1933 Ford Coupe in custom colors with a chopped top, showcasing to us the aftermarket industry in the forefront of the MTV generation. Well, you were sitting down watching your music videos from both LL Cool J, Twisted Sister, and even Cyndi Lauper. ZZ Top, who had been around since '69, was popping up right next to them. And with them, they were showing us that every girl crazy about a sharp-dressed man. And that sharp-dressed man was driving a custom-built Ford Coupe. And it made something of nostalgia. One of those amazing cars in history that we all strive and want. Similar to that of Ecto-1 and the Back to the Future DeLorean, the ZZ Top Ford Coupe is one of those most recognizable vehicles. You can chop the top of a 33 Ford Coupe, paint it red, and you don't even have to put anything else on it. Hell, you don't even have to paint it. And people automatically see it and go, oh, that's a ZZ Top car. ZZ Top has been ingrained in automotive culture due to that car. But that car also helped bring to light the aftermarket industry by showcasing to us what you can do, things that have been happening as far back as the 1950s. Chopping the top of your old Deuce Coupe, dropping it down, doing custom paint job. Like, these were all things that people had seen before and just thought it was average. But ZZ Top is showcasing to us like I said, the MTV generation, these amazing videos. And they started utilizing more and more vehicles in their music videos. For Legs, Sharp Dressed Man, Lagrange, they were showcasing the classic industry. And they were starting to bring to light some of these amazing products from the past and amazing things that we all wanted. It was the 1980s, hell, the 50s, and even the 40s weren't that long ago. They're a lot longer these days, considering the fact that we're coming up on almost 100 years since the 30s. So cars from that era are becoming even more valuable. Where in the 80s, there were still a lot of them around. You could find them out in farmers' fields just laying there, dying, because it was just an old classic car. Your grandfather owned it, and he drove it right into the ground and left it out there. Well, along come these grandkids who want these. And this generation who has one of the most abundant resources of coupes being the 1980s, they want fun vehicles. And they want to rebuild those classics. They want to bring back their love affair with the past. Similar to the right now of products from the 1980s. I always tell my son, only up until a couple years before he was born, I can go to any hawk shop and find a Nintendo GameCube for like $20 because nobody wanted them. They all wanted the Wii. Nowadays, I go in and they're $100. I get it. It's a lot older than it was, but throughout my life, those things have never been that valuable. Even at that time, when the GameCube was $20, people weren't even paying more than $50 for a Nintendo. It's similar to that of the classic car industry. Vehicles from the 1960s and 70s were still hanging around on the roads in the 1980s, so we weren't looking at them as classic cars. But as that industry and that nostalgia came out, and bands like ZZ Top were showcasing it to the world, our interest was piqued and we wanted more. From ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons, the guitar player, is a famous car collector. He essentially wanted to bring his favorite products for the music videos. He knew the 1980s was all about creativity, and since MTV was new, people wanted to try new things. Where bands like Motley Crue were going all out crazy with makeup, sexy women, and crazy music videos. ZZ Top wanted to kind of use some of that for their music videos, having attractive women in it, but also showcasing where they're from in Texas. Kind of a desolate backwoods area. When you watch the music video for Legs, you really see what they were seeing. These little backwoods garages rebuilding some of these classic cars. You were cool if you had it, and even cooler if you built it. And they were showcasing that at a time when people were out there buying the newest products, because new cars were still at a relatively entry-level price point, and there was an abundant amount of different products out there. The 1980s was full of coupes and sports cars, giving in all the way into the 90s. So classics you didn't even need. So why did Billy Gibbons say, let's put a cool car in this music video? Let's bring the industry I love to the forefront. Well, they did that because that is ZZ Top. ZZ Top is cool music to listen to in your cool car. It doesn't necessarily have to be a classic car, but it has to be a cool car, because ZZ Top is cool like that. A band made up of 3 men, all with beards, with only the one who doesn't have beard on his face. He has beard in his name. Frank Beard didn't have a beard, but he had it in his name. ZZ Top made big beards and garage nostalgia commonplace in the aftermarket tuning industry. They showcased to us more than just a cool car. They showcased an entire world outside of that. They showed the classic car industry and the people who were building it. And they did that through music videos and their own music. They showcased cool muscle cars, muscle car meet and greets with other people, bringing your cool car to amazing places, showing up in the right car to the right place at the right time. It wasn't just about showcasing their cool hot rodding that they remembered from the 1950s and 60s. It was about bringing that hot rodding back and showcasing it to the world that was being overridden by imports. You have to remember the 1980s is the great downfall of the American automobile industry. It's when the rise of the Asian invasion and the Japanese was taking over the American marketplace. So big block engines were giving way to small, fuel-efficient vehicles. Sure, a gas crisis made it so we wanted those vehicles, but the ones that could afford these cool old 33 Ford Coupes with the big block V8s still wanted them. Hell, it was the 80s. My dad still drove his Mustang back then. A 1970 Ford Mustang with a 351 Cleveland jammed underneath the hood. Big block V8. The ZZ Top car culture was at home. In my home, we loved our muscle cars, and we loved that nostalgia. We loved going out to the garage. I love riding and hearing that big burly V8, and so does Billy Gibbons. But this is all showcasing the 1980s mixed with hot rodding from the 50s. They were bringing a new wave of hot rodding to the world. Sure, they were using classic cars, but you have to remember, things like this happen throughout time. Fast and Furious brought the entire import sports car industry back to life in the early 2000s. They were showcasing cars from the late 80s and early 90s to us. A lot of people by that time, when the Fast and Furious came out, the RX-7 and the Supra at that time, one of the most desirable sports cars from Japan, were just a sports car on sale. It really wasn't until that movie showcased it to us that those vehicles blew up on a North American scene. Unfortunately, it was too little too late to save them, them, where the aftermarket industry now is trying to save the ones that still exist. Similar to how ZZ Top was showcasing the 1950s hot rodding culture in the 1980s in music videos, bringing something back to life and doing it in a way that people could understand and using a medium that the new generation was already into. But the coolest aspect about the car that they brought in was something that not a lot of people did at that time. Lowrider culture, born in the late 60s and hell, even starting in the 1950s, but really didn't take off until the late 70s. And if you've listened to our podcast about Cheech and Chong and lowriding culture, really not until the 70s did the lowrider culture take off. That ZZ Top brings something else into the mix. They brought the artistic appeal of creative art to the automotive industry. Up until this time, people just painted their cars. They put ground effects kits on them and paint their car a solid color. Not a lot of people were doing flames, like custom work flames with a multitude of different colors. Not just like a red on an orange or an orange on a red. They were doing the orange fading into white and yellow and getting those reds in there, going to the dark red on a black car. Like they were moving a multitude of colors. And their car essentially was an art piece to the automotive world. And even today, it's considered an art piece for the automotive world as one of the most nostalgic music video cars of all time. When you think of the MTV generation of the 80s and 90s, and I ask you to name one car you remember from a music video, and I'm asking somebody who's not a diehard automotive fan like myself, most people will only be able to recall the ZZ Top Eliminator. It's ingrained in our minds. And because of that, those Ford Coupes are desirable and Ford Coupes are remembered. It's the same car that was utilized. Similar to the Ford Coupe used in the movie American Graffiti. It was one of the most highly built Fords of all time. Hell, the Beach Boys even sang about it in their little Deuce Coupe. Those Ford Coupes from the 1930s, during an era of depression, became synonymous with hot rodders in the 1950s. And in the 80s, ZZ Top was bringing that back, but they were adding that artistic complex to it. They're bringing a new avenue to the aftermarket world, where people started looking at it and saying, hey, this is cool. Whereas the Fast and the Furious generation brought decals to vehicles, ZZ Top brought custom paint to vehicles. They created a nostalgic car for the MTV generation, and they did it with an amazing paint job. If they painted that car just straight red, would you have remembered it as much as having a custom Z logo on the side of it? Probably not. The Toyota Supra, if you remember from Fast and the Furious, when it's first brought in by Paul Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, it's just a pumpkin. It's a burnt down orange Supra. That's it. But by adding the stickers, you add that art effect to it. They were bringing that to light, showcasing to people that that artistic complex in the automotive industry needs to be there as well. Adding custom work like that, similar to what you find in lowrider industry. They were doing it, and they were bringing it out to the world. But it didn't just stop there. ZZ Top went even further. Lagrange eventually became synonymous with being an adrenaline racing song. Similar to that of both Radar Love and Green Onions from the past, Lagrange is one of those famous racing songs of all time and one of the best driving tunes of all time. My first CD I ever created, well, actually it was even before CDs, my first cassette that I made a custom compilation of the world's greatest driving tunes. Lagrange is on it. Of course, so is Radar Love and Green Onions, along with a few others that you might find. And a lot of those that spawned out of the MTV generation being driving songs, like dedicated driving songs, all came from bands that showcased amazing cars in their music videos that went along with the song. Korn's Got the Life has a Ferrari F355 in it. And no, if you've actually watched the music video, they don't actually trash that car at the end of the music video. It's actually a fiberglass shell, not an actual one. But people remember that F355. There's a whole bunch of other driving songs that are perfect and great like that. And they include cars in their music videos. Even today, some of those ones. How about Ace Hood and Bugatti? Hell, it's right in the title. Bugatti. Do you know what he's talking about? Hell, the music video Steel Dre, essentially a pinnacle of lowrider culture. Not only is it a song for cruising in your lowrider, it is a song that showcases it. And that is what ZZ Top also did with Lagrange. They made it a part of an automotive driving tune while showcasing an automotive excellence in this video. But next to that, ZZ Top had one last thing up their sleeve. We're creating amazing artwork for the records on both the Eliminator and Afterburner covers from 1983 and 1985, showcasing that 33 Ford Coupe on it, being one of the most sought after, amazing record covers of the 1980s that anybody who is a car collector wants to get their hands on. And trust me, my dad has Eliminator, but he doesn't have Afterburner, and I really want to find that record. I'm not willing to spend a fortune for it, but they showcased automotive artwork on a lot of their records, like a lot of their records. They were all about cars. But the last ace up their sleeve wasn't from their amazing artwork on their records. Even though that helped bring even more people into the automotive industry and created amazing posters that even automotive people would put on their walls, even if they didn't like ZZ Top, they would still want that picture on their wall. You can find them, like actual artwork of the covers for both Eliminator and Afterburner without the ZZ Top inscription on them, because people want automotive art. And like myself previously, when I was actually doing my silhouette art through the auto art division, people want it, and people love having automotive art, especially if you're an automotive person like myself. But like I said, this wasn't the last ace up their sleeve. They had one last one that cemented them in automotive history and being a part of automotive culture. Sure, they put a car in it, and they really showcased it to the world. Sure, they brought the artistic factor in and the aftermarket factor. Sure, they put it on the artists. ZZ Top had done it, and they become a part of the automotive world, and they become a band that's associated with the automotive world. But one last ace up their sleeve really cemented their name in automotive history, and that was a guest spot on one of the most famous automotive movies of all time, Back to the Future. If you didn't know this, the band, not the Western band, but the band from Back to the Future 3 that's playing and Doc Brown gets shot at, that's ZZ Top. And when Strickland's great-grandfather says, "This is a party, let's get back to it," and they start playing that's ZZ Top right there. ZZ Top is a part of the movie. They're a part of Back to the Future. They made music for the soundtrack. So ZZ Top became part of one of the biggest automotive movies of all time. They cemented themselves as being part of the automotive world. And for that, ZZ Top is one of the most influential automotive bands of all time. Sure, they didn't drive a car or showcase their car in the movie. Hell, they couldn't showcase their car in the movie because that car wouldn't even be created for another 50 years. But they were a part of the movie, and that added to their cool factor. They did this once again in the late 90s when Dusty Hill decided to make a guest appearance on Mike Judge's adult comedy, King of the Hill. Yes, the man who created Beavis and Butthead, and I'm just going to put this out there, Beavis and Butthead Do America is my favorite movie of all time. Like, I watched it 27 times the first month I owned that VHS, okay? King of the Hill was a little bit off with me, and it was more of an adult comedy. Probably the reason why my dad and a couple of his friends actually watched that cartoon. It was one of the early iterations of adult comedy cartoons out there. And Dusty Hill was the cool uncle of the squarest of square men, Mr. Hank Hill. Yes, Hank Hill himself. His own cousin was Dusty Hill. They wrote him in to King of the Hill. There's no automotive appeal there, except for the fact that Bobby, Hank Hill's son, is over the moon when he finds out about this. ZZ Top, one of the greatest bands to ever come out of Texas, one of the most influential bands with their 33 Coupe. That's my uncle. It brought them back to life. Sure, it wasn't that far after they had done their Back to the Future bit, but it was putting them back in the limelight. And with that, some people started researching. Because you have to remember, by the time they were on that show, the internet was around. So you could research ZZ Top. YouTube wasn't out yet, but that car cult factor that rode behind ZZ Top was still there. And that next generation could get into it. Later on in the future, Billy Gibbons decided to go on many different YouTube shows and television shows to showcase his extensive automotive collection off to the world, showcasing even custom-built other variations of the Ford Coupe, bringing some of them to SEMA, to Motorama, and showcasing that. Not just the fact that it's the guitar player from ZZ Top, but showcasing the fact that ZZ Top is a part of automotive culture. ZZ Top is to the hot rodding scene as Cheech and Chong song is to the lowrider culture. They are there and they are a part of it. And whether you like it or not, they're going to be part of it for a long time. From that amazing artwork on their Eliminator cover to the music videos that brought us that Ford custom ZZ Top coupe, all the way up to Back to the Future and King of the Hill, ZZ Top has been a part of the automotive culture for a long time. And even today, even though they're not making as much music and not touring around as much anymore, because now that's only 2 of them left, ZZ Top will still be known of as an automotive band. ZZ Top is a part of the automotive culture. Whether you like it or not, they will always be a part of it. And it's not just because Billy Gibbons is a car collector. It's because ZZ Top has ingrained themselves into car culture and has created one of the most iconic music video cars of all time, if not the most iconic music video car of all time. ZZ Top, the car band, will always be remembered. So if you liked our podcast, please like, share, or comment about it on any major social feeds or streaming services that you found the AutoLooks podcast on. Send us any emails, click the like button at the bottom, and hell, share us with your friends. Do whatever you can and spread the word about the AutoLooks.net podcast and AutoLooks.net website to all your friends, family, well-wishers, and I don't even know, even your enemies, your bosses, that asshole boss at the end of your cubicle aisle that you fucking hate. Send them this podcast and maybe you'll find out that the 2 of you have a love affair for either ZZ Top or the ZZ Top custom Ford coupe. You just never know. Send it out. Tell them to give a listen and ask them, are you into cars? Or are you just into great American rock and roll music? And after that, head on over to the AutoLooks.net website, read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, and go to the Corporate Links website page. Big or small, we have them all. Car companies from around the globe on the Corporate Links website page at the AutoLooks.net website. Just click the link at the top, you'll go straight there. And if you need some help finding some information or even finding some cool sites, go to the help pages on the AutoLooks.net website. You can find things from wrecking yards to an amazing website, 3dtuning.com, where you could build your own hot rod online and put it in your own digital garage online to see if other people like it. Trust me, the AutoLooks actually has one there, and if you look for Everett J, you'll find my cool garage on 3dtuning.com. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So for myself, Everett J, the AutoLooks.net website and the Ecom Entertainment Group, strap yourself in for this one fun, wild ride that this one sharp-dressed man is going to take us on.